Welcome to a football show Monday edition. That is Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I am Braden Gall, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. The Tennessee Titans lose 20-13, despite a nice final interesting drive there by the Tennessee Titans down in Jacksonville. They are now 3-13. They are now 9-31, Paul, in their last 2.5 seasons. They have won 9 of their last 40 games. They are 2-12 in the division over their last 14, with one more to go against Houston. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
So much for pride in divisional games and fighting for place in the AFC South, last place in the AFC South, guaranteeing a trip to Cleveland against the bottom feeders of the AFC North next year. Still to be determined the two home teams that they will get out of the bottom of the NFC South and the AFC North.
What we will discuss today. So I want to sort of cleanse the palate at the end of the show, Paul. We've got some very interesting things happening in the NFL from a historical sort of record standpoint. There's also one of the most historic records in all of sports being chased right now that I don't think many folks are paying attention to. So I have a philosophical question that hopefully you, the fans, can get involved with as well, about records in sports a little bit later on, maybe cleanse the palate. I think one of the more interesting discussion points now, as we get closer to what could be a 3-14 season, although the Tennessee Titans are favored at home by 4.5 points, assuming the Houston Texans do not play a whole lot of their starting roster, considering they've already locked in their slot. So we'll see what happens in the final week of the regular season. But the season itself has obviously not gone the way the front office would like it to. You've sort of long been reporting that the wind is blowing towards Brian Callahan keeping his job. I think that's the right thing to do. In general, the question now remains is there any pressure on anybody else in the front office, considering how poor the team has played over the course of the last few weeks and, frankly, 2 seasons, as I just laid out the numbers there. And then we'll get into why this was maybe the worst weekend or the worst Sunday of action that the Titans could have had in this particular situation based on how they played, but also based on what's going on around them. A lot of myths, by the way, Paul, and I heard you took a lot of questions on your show on Sunday after the game about like some of the myths that are floating around about the draft and about some of the prospects. So we'll touch on that. If you want to get into the comment section, please do so. Thumbs up, rate, review, subscribe on the podcast app, all that great stuff. So make sure you turn on the notifications and share the product right now to get more folks into the comments. And of course, Predemption and Louie, we see you guys already. Okay. So first, the bad. The Titans losing to Jacksonville. I think this was the important one to lose, Paul. They could win next week, but I think a lot of teams could win next week because it's just such a weird weekend. There's so many teams that have already locked into slots. I do think if you are going to lose one, this is the one to lose, but it's certainly not fun to watch, very difficult to watch. So how do you balance, in your opinion, watching a team that has so many clear flaws, that has not progressed in so many key positions, and at the same time, you're seeing the Giants lose the number 1 pick by winning, playing hard. You see the Raiders losing a pick ahead of the Titans, and then Jacksonville. So the Titans have moved up to number 2 in the draft. That's a positive silver lining in all of this. The Titans weren't tanking, though. They were trying to win the game, and it still was real ugly.
Well, I think once they lose that one, then they shouldn't win this one. I mean, they've lost to backup quarterbacks plenty of times, including Davis Mills last year, I believe. They just lost to Mac Jones for the second time in 3 weeks. Trevor Simeon's not starting this game. I don't expect a widespread sit down, but look, they don't have to do anything drastic to lose to the Houston Texans at home. They've won 3 games. So people are acting like, it's going to take drastic measures for the Titans to lose a game that would keep them at number 2 or conceivably get them to number 1 if New England beats Buffalo, another team that is going to be sitting people and getting ready for the playoffs. The thing is, Buffalo has won 3 in a row and is looking good going into the playoffs. Houston looks terrible going into the playoffs. They got pounded by Kansas City, and then they got really destroyed just on Christmas Day by the Ravens. They scored 2 points. So I think even if you can't sit everybody for starters, the roster doesn't allow for that. Houston is unlikely to play Stroud, it sounds like, from reports there and speculation by insiders. But they're going to have some playoff level football players on the field. They lost to the Titans in Houston. Titans are going to be in the Houston Oilers throwback uniforms. I don't think that's going to be a big motivating factor, but a lot of people are really big on that.
It's going to be a real good look.
Yeah. Hopefully this isn't going to be win one for Amy, who likes to beat the Texans, and I am anti-tank, but in this situation, it down to one game at the end, it's clearly better for them to lose. And I would sit Tony Pollard, though he's got some incentives. He's banged up. They shut him down for the ankle on the second to last weekend of the season. I don't have any problem with him not playing in this game. Tajay Spears unlikely to clear concussion protocol quickly on a second concussion, I believe, this season. So it's a Julius Chestnut, Joshua Kelly running back game. Things like that, I don't have any problem with. And if they lead to a loss, I don't have any problem with that.
I think we do need to clarify something here. If you ever needed a more crystal clear example of how tanking is not a thing that happens to players and coaches in the NFL, I'm not saying that an organization doesn't maybe play it safe with the player. We'll get to that in a second. But Sunday was no clearer example of how the NFL has removed the ability to sort of tank. As you watch all these other bad teams, quarterback needy teams, Raiders and Giants specifically, win games and hurt their long-term draft stock with performances yesterday on Sunday. And Mason Rudolph's face, this is the one that stuck with me, Paul, and I don't know why. Mason Rudolph's his body language and his face after he missed Chig on the sideline on the final drive, where he drops his head and is clearly very upset with himself, very frustrated. He shows some emotion. It is clear that on that last drive, they were absolutely trying to win the game. These players cannot afford not to do their best and put their best on tape. Now,
and that's a terrible throw, by the way. He made at least three terrible throws on that drive. Another soft little touch to Ridley over the middle that Ridley had to turn into defensive back on that he had no business making. And Callahan approved of the last throw to NWI, which I also thought
floated a little bit.
Was a floating throw.
And then Sunday night, I'm watching Michael Penix throw an absolute laser beam into Kyle Pitts on fourth down. You're like, oh, that's what it was supposed to look like. So Ed says, I've been willing to give Callahan the benefit of the doubt, but the quarterback decision these past few weeks have been confounding. What exactly is there to evaluate Rudolph? We'll get to, he had some comments about the 2 quarterback system, which could be coming this weekend. We'll play that in just a second, but I don't think he's evaluating Rudolph. I think he truly believed that Rudolph gave them the better chance to win a few games, tried it. They did not. And by the look of that last drive, it sort of is what it is. He's good enough to give the team, put him in a position to win a game, but probably not good enough to finish the deal. And he missed a bunch of open throws.
I agree with you entirely. Look, you could play Levis for one reason, evaluation. You could play Rudolph for another reason. Probably gives us a slightly better chance to win. And, you could have enough to evaluate Levis on in their eyes and decide to go with the guy that gives them a better chance to win in their eyes, which was fair. And then, Rudolph comes up short. So they go into this one saying, well, we'll play both.
Yeah. Well, we might as well just hear from the coach then at that point, because he did mention potentially having both quarterbacks going back and forth against Houston. Here's what he had to say.
I think at the end of the day, we didn't win, we didn't win those games. So I think that's all part of it. And, I don't think there'll be any issue with that. I think they're get a chance to play some ball and see if we can't put together a good performance. And, maybe it's a situation where guys playing well, just let him play. And if he's not playing well, we'll let another guy take a chance at it. So it'd be different had we won 2 games in a row with Mason, and I'd probably stick with him for the last game. But we hadn't. We are where we are with our game performance and our record. We'll let those guys have a chance to both play.
I love that answer, by the way. The question was, you said you were putting Mason in the spot with 3 games to go because he gave you a better chance to win. So if it gives you a better chance to win, what changed? He said, we didn't win.
I do appreciate his honesty.
Yeah. What changed is he had 2 chances to win, and we didn't win.
How many times in your career have you heard a coach just say like, well, we're gonna, we'll just let one guy try, and if he's doing all right, we'll just leave him in there, and if he doesn't do all right, we're gonna put another guy in there. Like about the quarterback position of an NFL football game.
I mean, that's they're not the only team in a major quarterback predicament, but they're certainly if there's a poster for this, they're on the poster of teams that are in dire straits with what they have going on and what they don't have going on at quarterback for sure. And it's the number one reason that they stink is that they haven't gotten steady quarterback play. But there are a lot of surrounding reasons around it as well. And like people are very excited about Chig Okonkwo's numbers over the last 3 weeks. I mean, yesterday they were a little bit more legitimate, but the 2 weeks before, when they're trailing by a ton and everybody's allowing them to dink and dunk, and he's allowed to mount numbers that everybody's going to go, go ahead, catch something in front of me and we'll tackle you. I mean, I wouldn't get excited about that. Those are numbers for a guy who's being allowed to catch stuff underneath. Like I understand if you're looking for excitement with the Titans, you got to find something, and he's had some numbers. Those are pretty meaningless numbers.
I guess, and my response to that is I don't really, I'm not necessarily excited about Chig specifically being a piece long-term or more than like a tight end 2, for example. But I do think what it does show you is like Callahan has figured out someone that he trusts and is willing to scheme it. And there is some level of like you said, if I'm searching for something and I'm a fan who's just in desperate need of something, I'm going, you know what? It's clear that Callahan has emphasized Chig in the passing game in their game plans. And if that's a positive development for Callahan and for the offense, whether it's Chig in that position next year or not, I guess that's maybe that would be my argument, I guess, about that.
I could see that, but how much of that has been schemed and how much of that has been the check down that's left? I mean, Mason Rudolph said last week, that's all there is. Like we're in a shell coverage and they're taking away Calvin and they're taking away Nick. And so after that, well, here's a tight end that's open underneath, so I'm giving it to him.
All right, so we got a couple other clips here. One of them is going to lead us into a conversation about Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker in the front office and whether or not they are safe this offseason or not. But I do want to debunk some myths real quickly about the draft, since it was a very good weekend for the Titans from that perspective. They go up to number 2 in the draft, and I've heard I got a bunch of this crap on Twitter. I'm sure you were mentioning it. I think some commenters were in your show last night talking about this. Look, it is so mind-numbingly dumb to talk about players opting out of bowl games like it is some moral problem. Like there's some reflection on their NFL draft stock. There is not. Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey both sat out bowl games, top 10 picks. There is no evidence, and I've talked to multiple front office people about this. There is no evidence that a player sitting out a bowl game has any impact on his draft stock whatsoever. 0%. Cam Ward won the record for the ACC passing mark and for the Miami passing mark, and he said it, and then he sat out. Shedeur Sanders was an example, in my opinion, of why a player should be sitting out of a bowl game. He got completely destroyed by the BYU Cougars for largely nothing. Now, here's bowl games are exhibition games. They are NFL preseason games. They are literal charity events that make money for people who run bowls. That's all they are. They don't serve any actual football purpose. NFL scouts treat them that way. Players treat him that way, and the folks who support Cam Ward's decision the most are the Miami Hurricanes teammates. The players support these other players doing what's best for their career. If you're an American citizen who loves personal freedom and capitalism, you cannot argue about what these players are doing and making decisions. It's their choice, their life. Now, let me ask you a question about the Titans. Tie it all together. Pollard and Hooker. If this was an 8-8 football team or a 7-8 football team or an 8-7 football team, and they were playing the Bengals in a must-win and get into the playoff situation, do you think that those two players were out yesterday?
I don't know about Hooker. I think Pollard could have played. I don't know about the flu element. Pollard, I was told, was going to be scratched because of the ankle before the flu came up, because he'd been pushing himself too many weeks through a thing that was getting increasingly bad. Now he would have pushed himself through, for anything. So I think if there were consequential stakes in play here, they would have been more prone to allow him to do it and be thankful for it in this situation. Without those, I think they said, hey, you're really beat up here and we don't need you to do this. So we're going to take the decision away from you and not let you go.
And you got any problem with that?
No.
Me either. Why is it? What's a hard? The NFL does it very, very, very rarely. Only in situations like this, where a player has put his ass on the line the entire season, is beaten up, and you know what? He's a part of the team next year with a contract. They want him to be healthy in the offseason, and the game means largely nothing.
Well, here's the difference. The college game sells these games as important. They put them on. Well, the game itself, they put them on in primetime television as independent games. They trump up to get the fans to fly out there. They make a huge event out of it. Now, smart fans know they're not a huge event. Smart fans know something different. But if you're dumb enough, and there's a segment of the fan population that's dumb enough to buy a plane ticket to wherever the Pop-Tart Bowl, there are people who are dumb enough to buy a bunch of Pop-Tarts because Pop-Tarts sponsors this game and to go there with an expectation of seeing Cam Ward play. And so there's a fraud committed upon those people here. The NFL's not committing a fraud on the people. In the NFL, there's an injury report, and you know that the guy's questionable, and you know that he's been beat up. And on Saturday, they give you an update even and tell you that he's not going to make the trip and all of that. In college, they still sell these bowl games like there's something. Josh Pate, who I think is excellent, riffed on this and say what a bowl game is now is really the start of spring bowl. It's not the end of your season. It's an advance on spring bowl. So you get to see a little of Cam Ward as a finale, and then you see a second half of next year's quarterback, and you get a taste. Hey, do we need to go to the portal to get the next guy, or is this our guy? Well, if you're content with that, that's fine. I wouldn't be content with that. I think spring ball is horse shit, and I don't care about little Timmy's status. I want games that mean something. So stop telling me it means something.
Well, here's the thing. No one is telling you that that's other than the person making money off the bowl is telling you that. No one, the school's not telling you that. The players aren't telling you that. The NFL scouts aren't telling you that.
School's not telling you the game. They don't want you at the game anymore.
No, it is the television partner that is telling you that exclusively. That's it. It's the television.
Miami didn't want to sell its share of tickets to that game.
It's ESPN. It's my part-time employer that is doing that, because no one. And here's the other thing: if we didn't watch them on television, there wouldn't be so many of them scheduled around the holiday season when there's nothing else going on Tuesdays and Mondays and Thursdays at 10 o'clock. And like, it's just, it is reality television shows that are, and I'm not kidding about this, they are from a business model. They're not LLCs. They're not part of a corporation. They are charities. They're literal charities. And I've been calling them charity exhibitions for over a decade. So I've been trying to do the opposite of what you're saying, which is sell people on this stuff. And here's the thing. I think by and large, college football fans have learned. And the only place that I heard a bunch of ridiculous takes about morality and Cam Ward's future and how he doesn't care about the name on the front of his chest and the guy who's played for 4 schools. like, where I heard about that?
NFL fans.
No, Twitter.
Oh.
Twitter. I didn't hear about it anywhere else. I didn't hear about it. I'm just telling you. There's a correlation with what's going on Twitter and the people who like to selectively have selective moral outrage about an issue that means absolutely nothing to their lives.
Where is the Pop-Tart game played?
I think it's in Florida. By the way, that's one of the best narrative bowl games that there is. They do a brilliant job marketing their Pop-Tart dying every game.
There is a percentage of fans of those teams that go to that game, and I begrudge those people.
That's fine. But here's the other thing. Being in the bowl game means so much more than people realize. It's about the extra practice time. It's about selling your recruits on like a trip and having a fun time for a lot of the players who do want to go play in the game. It's all of that is like fine. The game itself means nothing. The actual play on the field means nothing. And I think most smart fans understand that. So
that's hard to be excited. For me, it's hard to see people excited that a school gets extra practice time, but the thing it gets extra practice time to have so little meaning that it equates to the blue and white game.
I mean, look, I can't argue what it means. I've been arguing that they're worthless for a long time. I think people are coming around on this. That is for sure. Eddie says, counterpoint, Vandy absolutely cared about that bowl game. That's fine.
Fun game to watch.
And that's okay. I think that's totally great. By the way, very feisty, those two teams in that bowl game. There's a lot of energy there. The point is that no, Cam Ward is not going up or down because of what he did or didn't do in a bowl game. It means absolutely nothing. If you think Cam Ward, if Brian Callahan sits down to analyze Cam Ward as the number 2 pick, assuming Shedeur Sanders goes number 1, they are going to analyze him on 1,000 things. And not one of those 1,000 items that they're going to analyze him on are what he decided to do in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And I just need people to understand that that's okay. that's my number one myth, that we just need to. It's an NFL preseason game, and players treat it as such, and that's okay. It's what's in their best interest of their own careers. And to Eddie's point, like, if you've played 6 years for a team and you're a middle linebacker and you're a walk-on and you love this university and you want to play in the game, that's great too. That's fine. That's your choice. So it's okay. All right. Let's hear some. Let's get into this conversation about the front office here, because Paul, you are you still clear on Callahan returning from your reporting and understanding?
Yes. I all indications are Brian Callahan is going to get a second chance at this.
I'm getting worked up here on my rant about college football bowl games.
Try to hold yourself together for another 40
Very emotional. Very emotional. Look, you can ask my wife. These vocal cords have powered through much, much worse. Okay. All right. So before we do that, I got to tell everybody about Sinkers Beverages. It is New Year's Eve coming up. My wife and I met 12 years ago on New Year's Eve. Very important holiday in our house, which means I walked in there and I said, look, I need a nice bottle of champagne. I don't need something expensive, but I don't want the cheap stuff. Give me something good. I'm going to get a nice bottle of bourbon for the party so that everybody has something to sip on. Got myself a really nice bottle of bourbon, really nice bottle of champagne. You go in there and you want to stock up on stuff for the New Year's Eve party. Sinkers Beverages is your place to go. Obviously, 4-time liquor store of the year. So go check out Sinkers Beverages. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well. I know we had a couple listeners go over the weekend and they were busy. So go check them out. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Excuse me, Paul. I'm dying here.
Yes. Shotgun Willie's. They have good food there. The brisket, I'm told, is phenomenal. So you need to go check it out. Texas style barbecue. And then wash it down with some Sinkers Beverages, anything that you want at all. And that's a combination, brisket and beverages.
All right. Let's hear from Brian Callahan. I'm crying. Let's hear from Brian Callahan here about the roster. You want to set this up?
Yeah. So it was just trying to get his sense if he would offer any. He navigated this very nicely as to whether the Titans, had a roster that should have been winning, or if part of the reason they weren't winning is because the roster simply wasn't good enough.
I think we're always in the business of improving our roster. That's the first thing. And we still need to continue to do that. We got another personnel acquisition cycle that starts when the season ends on Sunday. It really starts from that moment on. So always trying to improve the football team as best we can. I thought when we were fully healthy and we started the season off, felt like we had a chance to be competitive. And so I think it's probably a mixture of both, Paul, to be honest. That there's some things I definitely had to do better, that I can do better as a head coach and put us in better position. And I think there's always room to continue improving the roster. And I thought we had some chances to win some games early that would have made maybe this season feel a little bit different than it does now. But I think that our biggest issue is some of the negative plays that have taken away from our ability to win the games, which, again, I've talked about the turnovers before. That's a huge part of it. But, I think a couple things go a little bit different. The feeling is different than it is right now. And we probably win a couple more games than the 3 that we've won. But, yeah, I think it's a process in totality. It's we got to coach and do things from our side better than we did, really all the way around. And we got to keep trying to find ways to add impact players wherever we can add them.
I don't like the couple things. If a couple things had gone differently, the feeling would have been different. If the feeling was different, then they would have won more. I think it's bigger than that. It's certainly been bigger than that.
I mean, Paul, he basically says, we got to coach better, got to play better. I mean, that's the last 4 sentences of his take there. I mean, he almost said the words verbatim.
I know people hate that, but it's not inaccurate. It's not a horrific thing to say when it's true.
I don't disagree with the truth. So I want to ask you first, before we get into this, like, how rare would the situation be for a first-year head coach to be kept by the general manager who selected him while that general manager is fired? Just, I'm not, we don't need to actually give statistics here, but in your opinion, isn't that an extremely rare? I mean, I don't, you've been on this beat a lot longer than I have. It seems odd and very rare.
We were looking at it the other way about, a GM hiring and firing a coach and surviving that, which, there were 8 or 10 examples of that happening. The other way around, I think, is quite rare. I can't think of any. Maybe somebody in the comments here is going to. I'm sure there have been a couple. Thing is that we can't make this too much Rand's hire, right? Rand was given the power, the personnel power, and kind of the feel that he was in control of this thing to some degree after Callahan was hired, right? That announcement was made. That structure was created once the hire was made. Now, he was heavily involved in it, but so was Chad Brinker. So obviously is Amy Adams Strunk, who ultimately signs off on it. So was Todd Torricelli, who's the director of sports medicine in the organization, who had a hand in it. So was Vin Marino, the salary cap guy. So there are a lot of people who sat in on a lot of different meetings as the Titans whittled down their list and came to the conclusion that Brian Callahan was going to be their guy. So I don't view this as if Carthon gets fired, wow, he got fired, and the coach he hired outlives him.
Are you under the impression? So you said something that I'm not sure I had thought through before, which is just because the announcement about Carthon's power came after some of the other announcements, that meant it actually was decided that way. I was always under the impression that Carthon was the overwhelming driving force in making the decision. It doesn't mean there wasn't lots of input from lots of voices. Burke Nihill was in the room, frankly.
Yeah.
So what's interesting to me is I always thought that the announcement was sort of an affirmation of what I assumed happened, which is that Carthon got the power. Vrabel was out. Carthon got the power.
I don't have any. I don't know one way or the other. I don't think Carthon got the power the minute that Vrabel was fired in terms of this structure, and I think it probably took some time because Carthon got a title promotion and he got a power increase in terms of the personnel. He also got demoted inside of that because most personnel power wielding GMs are vice presidents or presidents in their, if they're real power brokers, they have those titles in the organization, and he doesn't. And Chad Brinker got one of his hires and employees. So right from the start, I said, this is weird because Brinker technically has a stronger title than Rand Carthon. And they said right away, well, what we're doing is we're going to really focus Rand on what Rand is really good at, which is personnel, which suggests Rand's not really good at day-to-day football operations, which include the field at Nissan Stadium and the travel planning and all of that. And on its face, it sounds nice. Hey, our GM's going to focus strictly on personnel, except find me another example of that on 31 other teams in the league where the GM is strictly a personnel guy and he doesn't deal with any of the other football operations stuff. And I don't think one exists. So he's a strong, weak GM, or he's a weak, strong GM, or however you want.
Either, yeah. I mean, this is one of those where, like, if the coach doesn't know something is happening on his watch, it's either ignorance or ineptitude. Like, it feels like one of those things where it's because I always thought that the titles were a little bit more semantics and a little bit more ceremonial than they were actual structure. I've always assumed Rand Carthon is in charge of the front office of the Tennessee Titans in general. Now, if Amy Adams Strunk is the person primarily deciding on which head coach is going to be the leader of her organization, that's not a comforting thought either. I've always been under the impression that Rand conducted the interviews. Rand is the point person on all of this, and a smart, good general manager is one that takes a lot of input from a lot of different places and then makes his own decision or her own decision. And I've always kind of felt that was how this went down. It doesn't. I'm not asking you to verify that or not. I
don't know, but my perception's been more like it was a committee deal, and they all came at this at this together. And it was her sorting out who needed to be doing what in light of Vrabel's power being a big problem.
Well, so then let's get to just
Vrabel's power and Vrabel's personality.
Let's just dive into the recency bias then of the game that happened yesterday. Jalen Harrell, Cedric Gray, James Williams were on the field for 4 defensive snaps total. The one that James Williams was on the field, he ended up being split out wide covering Travis Etienne, and they gave up a touchdown to Brian Thomas. Brownlee also on the field for a lot of snaps and has been a very good player. J.C. Latham did not have a great game and is trending from a pass pro standpoint like the end of a rookie season. I think he's going to be very good. I think he's a good run blocker. He's having some moments that are rookie struggles. That makes sense. Devondre Sweat's been very good. Has been a very good draft pick relative to his value in the position of need. Brownlee, I think, has a bright future, but got cooked yesterday by a very good player, but also a rookie. If you are telling me that the only real job that Ran Carthon has is to be completely in charge of all the personnel, and personnel is his focus. Ridley had a decent game. Awuzie was out there, wasn't great. Snead wasn't out there. Kenneth Murray's on IR. I know a lot of this is out of his control. Lloyd Cushenberry, out. Tony Pollard, out.
Diggs, out.
You look at yesterday's game, and it is hard to see the positive impact that Ran Carthon had on that game.
Absolutely true. I mean, Spears had a nice game before he got hurt. That's a 3rd round.
Good point.
Pick. That was the bright spot for this team personnel wise in Ran Carthon acquisitions. Latham's downturn has been 6 games, maybe. I mean, so it'll be 7. I don't know how he finishes. Hopefully he finishes with a big game against the Texans, but that's a long downturn to just say, like, hey, the final third of the season, the final third plus of the season was rookie downturn. That's a big section of games. So, and I asked today, we could play this now. I asked, Callahan, is there a scenario where you guys wind up with an offensive tackle who's better suited to be your left tackle that kicks Latham back to the right side?
Yeah, hard for me to make any statements about something like that. I don't know enough about the draft to make any definitive commentary on it. I just know that we're always open to adding as many good players as possible. So take that for whatever it's worth. I don't really know what's available or what's out there, but we're always looking to add as many good players as we possibly can, and I would never essentially close the door if it meant that we could add a particular player. So, I would say it's probably pretty safe to say he's the left tackle, unless we change our mind. It's probably the best way to put it.
Everybody is the guy until they're not the guy. That's the nature of the NFL. Look, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, Will Campbell out of LSU, 2 very good options that could be top 10 picks, probably are top 10 picks. I've seen a few mock drafts, Paul, with Titans taking Banks at number 3 or 4 or 5. I always looked at that and went, that's insane. But this is your argument, right?
Well, yeah. And you also hear it said about those guys, they might be guards, right? I mean, that's the level of draft we're talking about here. It's a really bad year to suck and have high picks throughout. I mean, it's better to have them high throughout the draft than not, but it'd be a good year to win a Super Bowl and not be reliant on restocking your franchise.
Why did they do that, Paul? Why did they do that?
Yeah.
Trevor says, I'm so ready for this miserable, pathetic season to be over and for the clown show of Dion to begin. All right, easy there, big guy. Shedeur, look, if they're picking first, I wouldn't be surprised if Shedeur Sanders is the pick. But we shall see. All right, so, but again,
we were talking in the press room, like And I think we're generally in concluding like 4 is the sweet spot. The Giants right now are at 4. The Giants seem like the team that would be anxious to get up to 1 if the Patriots are picking at 1 for presumably Sanders. Then you need somebody to want to come up to 2, ideally to get Ward. Candidates there would be the Jets and the Raiders. But 4 might be as deep as it goes for the pass rusher from Penn State, who seems like, maybe
Abdul Carter.
That Carter is like still getting a primo player. So if you could dump out a 2 and go to 4 or maybe 5 and get Abdul Carter, then you could really be working something, right?
Is it fair to say of the top 9, which is New England, Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, Jacksonville, Carolina, the Jets, Raiders, and Bears? By the way, a record number, I believe, of 4-win teams heading into the final regular season game. It's the Raiders, the Giants, the Titans, and then question mark Jets. Otherwise, everybody else. I know the Cleveland reworked Deshaun's contract, but he's still going to be on the roster. New England loves May. I think that's the right answer for them. Caleb Williams is obviously the starter there. You got Bryce Young, I guess, has reestablished himself in Carolina, and Trevor Lawrence doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. So is it just the 4?
I don't think Deshaun solves Cleveland. So I think Cleveland's got to fix. I don't think Deshaun's going to play for Cleveland anymore in any big way. You saw just how striking the turnabout was for their ability to win and contend with Jameis. I don't know if it's Jameis or another veteran or what for them.
Isn't Kirk Cousins sort of earmarked for Kevin Stefanski with their history and stuff?
Maybe. You also hear some potential maybe of the 49ers for him if they decide to, if they're going to pay a quarterback, that maybe they'd pay Cousins and not go long-term with Purdy. So
I feel like Purdy's going to get a 1-year prove-it deal that's not worth as much as people think. That's what
it's very hard to give a guy a 1-year prove-it deal with the franchise tag looming. I mean, that franchise tag number is the number. So prove it for the number. Well, that number is 44, I think, or 37.
I mean, would you get 3 years, $90 million for Brock Purdy and like make 52 of it guaranteed? Like, I don't know.
3 years, $90 million does not sound too bad that sounds palatable to me for a guy that's going to give you a chance and that could leave you to worry about a lot of other concerns.
Sounds like also the dollar figure that Derek Carr might be asking for, roughly, ballpark, maybe less than that, but ballpark. So again, going back to the front office and the blame here, blame's not the right word. It's just so I want to use the draft here to get into more of the Carthon conversation, because I think you kind of touched on this a little bit on your show. And I think this is ultimately the most interesting point in all of this, which is if Carthon does survive and Brinker does survive and the front office does survive, they're going to go into a draft knowing that they're on the edge here, that they have to do something quickly to save their jobs because it just hasn't been good enough. And if it's bad midway through next season, almost everybody's gone, assuredly, including the head coach. How does that affect the way they make decisions at the top of the draft? I think this is a really huge dynamic at play that we haven't talked a whole lot about, which is their desire to succeed quickly and save their jobs may not align with what is best for the franchise.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the challenges for Amy Adams Strunk as she talks to these guys. Like, I hope she has the foresight to say, I need you to be considering long-term future here, and I'll factor that in going forward. If I see the signs that we're heading the right direction, if I hear from other football people, I don't know who those people would be, that they like the direction that we're moving. I need us to be a healthy franchise for the next 3 years, not the next 3 months. That would be good. But these are the positions, she's a big girl, and these are the positions that she's gotten herself into. And so she's got to weigh all of that stuff. And so I think it comes down to, give me what you got. What are your feelings at this stage about Sanders and Ward? And the possibility of getting out of 2 and what you do if you got out of 2. And, if she's going to ask for a plan, Rand's not big. I mean, you remember a year ago he didn't have much of a plan. Not that he could share publicly.
He had the concepts of a plan.
Yeah, maybe concepts of a plan. A month later, he had a plan. Look, and Rand, this isn't going to be a good month for Rand. He's going to come to a press conference. He's going to be all smiles. He's going to slap everybody on the back. He's going to get a question about saying that he checked all the boxes on offense, and I'm not expecting he's going to have a good answer for it.
Do you? It's the weird. I don't like predictions. I don't like picking scores. I don't like, does he keep his job or not? I'd like to know if you are in his corner. You are the head of PR and comms for Rand Carthon, and he's about to sit down at probably next Monday or Tuesday with Amy Adams Strunk and maybe whoever else is in that room. Unsure who it is based on our previous conversation about the actual power structure, and you have to make your case. Amy says, "Make your case." What are you coaching him on right now?
How to plead for patience, how to polish up Latham and Sweat and Brownlee and Skoronski and Spears into guys that are, have remarkably excellent futures. How Levis's problems were unforeseen and unforeseeable. I think Rand's good at nonsense. So Rand, from all accounts, can really sell people who want to be sold. So the question is, how much does she want to be sold?
There's another dynamic here in all of this, which I am unsure of, and I don't know if there's any way to ever find out until after all of our careers are over. And that is, where's Brian Callahan on all this? Does Brian Callahan, Amy Adams calls him up and like, hey, are you alone? I got to ask you something real fast. Like, what do you think of X, Y, and Z? I mean, what do you owe somebody that was part of giving you the best opportunity, most important opportunity of your life? You would think that there's some loyalty, but this is the NFL. There is none. Yeah,
it's every man for himself. And again, I don't think Rand was singular in that hiring by any means. I mean, it's really hard to believe that a 3-win or 4-win coach has that much power in helping decide who is in the other big seat of power. So she's going to go to a coach that just had a terrible first year, who's getting a second year largely just because it's a terrible look to fire a coach on 1 year, and she wants to be patient. And she's going to ask him what he thinks she should do with the other chair. I mean, it's all such a tangled, weird
mess.
Tangled, weird mess.
It's not.
But I am going to spend some time in the next 24 hours looking at people who have worked with Brian Callahan in all these other stops, front agent types. Because if, in fact, they are looking for a GM, I mean, you want a GM who likes Brian Callahan. And now everybody's going to say they like Brian Callahan because they want the job. But, who's got a work history with Brian Callahan is probably relevant.
And to your point about this being all jumbled and everything, it's like if Vrabel and Carthon overlapped by 1 year and that wasn't good, and then he's out and then Carthon's in, but then Callahan's in and then they overlap, you're never going to find a line. Levis is not lined up with any of this stuff either. Like, there is, obviously, I'm just saying the quarterback is not lined up. So in a perfect world, if you're a Titans fan, and here's just like, go with me on this for a second. If in a perfect world, what you want is for Rand and Brian to have like clear an actual agreement on the player that they want. And let's say it's a quarterback. They both love Cam Ward. They both love Shedeur Sanders, whatever. They love that guy. They go into Amy and they say, this is what we believe in. Give us the chance to do this. That is actually maybe best case scenario. It may be wrong. And all three of them, the coach, the GM, and the quarterback, might all be bad. But it does feel like at least there's alignment there. And at least everybody's on the same page. Because to your point, if you change the GM, which I think is possible here, and you keep the coach, which is rare, first-year head coach hired by, in part, the GM, who then loses his job while the coach keeps his job, there's no alignment in any of this, even if you're going to find somebody to work above Brian that knows him and has worked with him for a number of years. Like, it's just, you got to have alignment at some point.
And it's too early for the kind of alignment you're asking for, because Callahan's not watched any college except,
Oh, no, I know.
On a rare Friday night, but when he was home or whatever, he can't jump into any kind of big alignment on any of these guys for a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday interview with Amy Adams Strunk. That's a season wrap.
Great. Titans are in great shape. Sinkers, Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. If you need to drink and eat meat, those are your two places to do it. Great beverages at Sinkers Beverages, of course, serving the East Nashville community for 40 years, and their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages, up in Hendersonville. Make sure if you're in the area, you can search Uber Eats and have them deliver the booze directly to your house if you're upset about what you're watching on Sunday. So check out Sinkers Beverages. They got great gifts, great merch, and, of course, great opportunities to help stock your New Year's Eve party coming up this week. So go swing by Sinkers Beverages. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, best brisket in the city. Go check them out. How does Mike Vrabel factor into all this, in your opinion? Is it Vegas? Is it the Jets? Is it for some reason Chicago is interesting to me?
I think it's Las Vegas. I think that Brady steps forward into a visible role as a kind of de facto owner. That Pierce will be gone, and that Brady working quote unquote for Brady is a tidy working environment there. The other one, I mean, Gerard Mayo's really been bad. And there's a lot of campaigning for him up there. And I think that would be a nice long-term security situation as well. If that
what would be,
and how about him having a first pick ahead of the Titans in the draft, looking to screw them every way possible to trade it or to use it on somebody that they want.
I read some stuff about how, because it's gotten so ugly, and because if you're just going to be in this situation, it's similar to the conversation about Rand Carthon. Like if you're going to be in this situation midway through next year, the difference is they have a guy in Vrabel that would be a no-brainer pick for them with the history and the ties and the relationship with Robert Kraft, et cetera, et cetera. So for some reason, I think Chicago is really interesting for Vrabel, but I don't think he's interested in that situation. The Jets are obviously a possibility with all the talent, especially on defense. But I think you're right. I think it's New England or the Raiders.
What's the best possible ownership situation after I think he thinks the ownership situation here is what did him in. And Kraft is good ownership. And
yep.
I don't know about Davis, but I think Brady for him certainly would be good ownership.
Man, can you imagine the content in this city after that whole fiasco of the bye week and going up there and being wined and dined by Kraft and the Patriots, and how everybody's feelings were so hurt in Nashville by the fact he went back to his, an organization that traded him away, by the way. I don't know. The content would be off the charts good or bad that week in Nashville.
Not as bad as it would have been if he went straight there after he got fired.
Yeah, we shall see. We'll see what happens in the front office. We'll see what happens here in about 8 days, 8, 9, 10 days. We'll see what happens if there's any decisions made with the Tennessee Titans. All right, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Quick question here. Saquon Barkley gets to 2,005 yards rushing. He's the 9th player ever in NFL history to get to 2,000 yards. He is literally 100 yards from breaking Eric Dickerson's record. Yes, he gets an extra game. I get that. Barry Sanders' record in college football, which has stood since 1988, is on the verge of being broken potentially by Ashton Genty of Boise State if he has a big game in the Fiesta Bowl against Penn State coming up this week. Derrick Henry, 1783. He is 217 yards away from becoming the only player in NFL history to go to 2,000 yards twice. I don't think they're going to ride him that hard, so I don't know if they do it. But either way, he's within striking distance of literally an unprecedented mark in NFL history. Alexander Ovechkin is trying to break Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record, which is one of the most absurd records in the history of professional team sports in this country. And I don't think that anyone has any idea that it's really happening. I don't feel like people are paying attention to it much. So my question to you, Paul, I know you're a huge baseball guy. I grew up a baseball guy, and records are such a huge part of baseball. And I got brought back into baseball because of the 98 home run chase with Sosa and McGuire. That brought me back after I kind of was pissed off about the strike in the early 90s. And then the Bonds thing happened, which was, if you'd have told 10-year-old me in 1991 or 2 that like I was going to watch Hank Aaron's record be broken, I would have cried about it. Like I would have been emotional about it. And I wasn't. Do you think we still care as a sports collective about these really historic numbers, especially in an age in the NFL where all we do is pass the football, and Barkley and Henry are doing something extraordinary on the ground. Where are you at on this?
Certainly the kids don't care. They don't know those numbers or follow something like a season, like maybe a single game record, like in the moment watching a game and hearing like, hey, this guy needs 70 more yards and he's gonna set an all-time record. I think they'd get into that. But I think you're on to something there. I mean, the Ovechkin thing, like when you get me to the moment, I'll care. I think people don't have the bandwidth for hockey anymore. It's very much fourth, and I think people don't hardly have room for third for themselves anymore in whatever their pecking order is. You know, they're all in on one, and maybe partially in on two, just the way things have worked outside of watching a little bit of highlight. But I'll say, and another example on your side, when Aaron Judge was approaching 61. They were breaking into some games and showing that, and people were pissed. And they were like, this isn't even an MLB record. This is an AL record, you know? Only older people who understood what 61 meant in the AL and for the Yankees in particular cared about it. So, I was into it, but that's my team in my league, so it's very specific to me. So, yeah, I think it means less. I think numbers in general mean less unless they're your fantasy numbers.
Well, what's so fascinating about that, though, is that metrics, numbers in general, have become such an important part of analyzing the game, any game, and running teams. Like, numbers have become more important while the accomplishments have been devalued. I do think that, like, our social media brains are broken by technology. It's what's the next hottest thing that's going to get me like, nobody, I learned how to do math on the back of a baseball card. Frankly, I learned what fractions are when I was 6 years old looking at baseball cards. And so I think studying those record books and enjoying the history of all of it was a big part of connecting with your sport. And now you can connect. I do think that the internet's a part of this, right? Like, you can watch every game, you can see every moment, you can read every, story and watch every highlight. Social media is there to engage your brain endlessly with overflow of content that'll never end. We're insatiable. So I think some of it's that. I think some of it is also just like, I don't care about passing numbers anymore, because you've said this on the show, I think, that or maybe it was Nick Suss on Thursday. It said like every quarterback over a certain completion percentage career-wise has largely happened in the last 25 years. And so that certainly does devalue when you see Matt Ryan's numbers, who's a very good player, but Matt Ryan's numbers, among the top 7 or 10 players of all time, you kind of know that the numbers have been devalued a little bit as well.
That's a Hall of Fame conversation with these receivers. That's only going to keep coming. They're going to be waves and waves of receivers with giant numbers. And, I think we're going to have to do a far better job of delineating just numbers from important numbers. And we need people in there to be kind of fair and understanding about ways to delineate those, instead of just jamming their guy down everybody else's throat by saying, well, if this guy got in, then that guy got in. We've got that going on now. Andre Johnson got in. So does that therefore mean that Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne get in because they're all very similar? Well, to me, Andre Johnson was a notch above in that he never had a good quarterback, and he was a singular guy. Whereas Reggie Wayne had Marvin Harrison and Torrey Holt had Isaac Bruce, who are both already in the Hall of Fame.
It is amazing, and I think about this when we think about the Titans receiver conversation, where it's like even the bad teams have at least a great wide receiver in the NFL right now, like Malik Neighbors, or for the Giants, or Devontae Adams was on the Raiders for most of the year until
Brian Thomas yesterday.
Right, exactly.
We're both
I'm verklempt about this. By the way, Barry Sanders' rushing record in 11 games was 2,628 yards. That does not count the 222 he put up in the bowl game, back when bowl numbers actually didn't count. To your earlier point, Paul, like we understood the value of a bowl game and that it didn't matter back in 1988. He had 2850 in 12 games. There's no way that even if Genty breaks his number, that you don't know that it was 14 games versus 12 games. The same with Barkley. If he breaks the record on Sunday, I think most people know, like, oh, that's an extraordinary accomplishment in 2024 rules.
Barry Sanders, I'm sure, was otherworldly at that stage. But what are these defenses that he's playing against? I mean, I know he's playing some good schools. I'm sure he's playing some good teams too. But how good are these defenses?
Well, but it's a college record. I'm not,
That's outrageous.
I mean, Genty played in the Mountain West, which is way worse defensively than the Big 8 was back in the day.
Well, I mean, Genty could break this record, and I'm not saying that he's the caliber of Barry Sanders.
First of all, Genty's very good, but you're right. He's not Barry Sanders. No one's saying that. I do think if you look at the list of 2,000-yard rushers, there's not an accident on there.
No, there's not.
There's not an accident on there. There
aren't many accidents in the NFL record book.
But that's kind of to the point we're talking about with the rules, right? Like the quarterbacks and the receivers, they're not accidents. They're very good players. But you got to move the thresholds when you're trying to evaluate these quarterbacks. And, 65% is like table stakes now.
Yeah.
And 65% in 1994 was like one of the greats of all time, So I don't know. We'll see. I'm just curious because I think. Do you think Derrick Henry goes? Do you think they run him to go after that 2,000 mark?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No, I don't think he'll get close to it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. You think? I think Barkley gets the 100 yards.
I think Barkley will get it too.
I think he'll break the alt, and that's been held by Eric Dickerson for almost 40 years. I think. When was that? Like 83? Is that right? 80 something like that.
Yeah, and he's really stealing Derrick's thunder at close to the end here.
Well, look, I honestly don't. I don't know if that's true. I think Derrick is getting. You're saying that
Derrick's not the running star of the season, but
he would be if not for Barkley. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I guess that's fair. That's fair. All right. We got college football playoff games coming up. We'll have SEC football live on Thursday. I'll have another episode with Nick Suss to break it all down as well on a football show on Thursday. Also, so have a happy New Year. Are you a big New Year's guy, Paul?
Not at all.
Amateur hour? You don't like going out? Amateur hour?
Amateur hour.
Yeah, I agree. Halloween, St. Patrick's Day.
I mean, if I'm not asleep by midnight, it's only because I've slept during the day a significant amount.
Calm down, Paul.
No matter when the sleep occurs and how boring the football is.
Well, hopefully Boise State makes a game of it on New Year's Eve night. We shall see. The games on Wednesday should be pretty good, so enjoy those as well. Make sure you support all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network, and go to paulkuharsky.com and pay for good local journalism. Support good local journalism. There you go. All right, that about does it for us. We do appreciate you guys showing up and having a good time and hanging out with us. Otherwise, rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, notifications, etc., etc., etc. Subscribe to paulkuharsky.com. Paul, Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year.
Talk to you next Monday. My name's Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. Have a good one, everybody.